Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Port Authority. And this is a film from Danielle Lesovitz and focuses on a Midwestern young man who comes to New York City. It's a fish out of water. It's really understanding this whole entire completely new world, and he gets caught up with a group of guys living out of a homeless shelter, and then falls in love with a young woman who turns out to be a trans woman, and he has to come to grips with that fact. And where does that direct him? Where does that leave him? And this film is starring Fionn Whitehead as Paul, who's our main character here. Obviously, he's been popping up in a lot of things lately, whether it's Dunkirk or Voyagers. And we have Lena Bloom, who is our young transgender woman, and she's a transgender actress, and which is a great thing in terms of representation and actually having a transgender person who is actually portraying this character, that authenticity, that representation. And this film has a very raw and intimate kind of feel to it. Lesovitz really captures this grittiness to New York and this experience of this character. And there's a very intense performance coming from Whitehead, who, every single frame is so intense, something's boiling underneath, and is really able to capture a lot of emotion. And you have this sense of intrigue about everything, because this whole entire lifestyle is a mystery to Paul, and soon you're pulling back layers in terms of living with this group of homeless young men and connecting with this whole entire new scene of people. And which, it's interesting watching this subculture being portrayed in this film, because I love the show Pose, and that's very much the forefront of that show, and this one's shown in a bit of a different way. There's a lot of focus on masculinity and sexual tension in this film, whether it's Paul and the other young men who live throughout this homeless shelter and their confrontations with each other, and with all the people in Y's family, in this makeshift family that she made for herself. And right off the bat, you definitely get this connection between Y and Paul. It's very endearing. There's a tenderness about some of their moments early on, as, say, they have their first kiss and everything. And some of the more entertaining aspects of this film is seeing this subculture in motion, doing Vogue or doing the runway, the catwalk. And the production design, I think, is really committed in that way. It's just, is this exactly the best portrayal? And is this the best person to be portraying this subculture? As Danielle Lesovitz isn't exactly part of this specific subculture, and I don't know if it's the most accurate representation. I am also not a part of the subculture, so not being able to confirm that or not. But you do have this film that really turns into exactly what you expect it to be, beat for beat. And you expect the certain aspects of tension, you expect these certain moments, and to undo those certain moments in terms of the narrative flow, and some of them are really rushed, and you're supposed to have a drop here, but wheep, literally a minute or two later you're right back together, just moving along. And I feel like this film is good in terms of its representation and has strong performances, but something that doesn't work really well is the fact that this whole story has these trans stories all told from the perspective of this young white guy. And it's like, do these kinds of stories have to be told from that perspective? And is that really meaningful? And in this film, I feel like it feels very cliched and very much of how can this help bolster, how can this culture help bolster and help this white person learn this lesson? And this film very much takes that kind of approach to it. And in the end, I feel like there's a lot going for this film. It doesn't always come together, it might not be coming from the best perspective, but it's well-meaning, and I think it is a solid effort. And at least from like a directing standpoint, I think it was a really strong effort with some very strong performances from Bloom and Whitehead. But those are my thoughts on Port Authority. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.